Okay, let's unpack this. Our deep dive today takes us into some incredibly detailed, raw source material. Notes taken directly from Officer Pomplun's body camera footage. This was during the execution of a search warrant.
Yeah, and this isn't just a quick summary. We're really committed to exploring everything the camera captured, everything the officer documented, moment by moment. The goal here is to take you inside that house, really walk you through the environment, the search, the interactions. We're planning to cover every detail from these specific notes.
Definitely. And the notes themselves give us a bit of a heads up. They mention some challenges like the audio isn't always clear, lots of background noise, movement.
Right, and the camera's jumpy because, well, Officer Pomplun is actively working, moving around.
Exactly. So we'll be relying heavily on the note-taker's documentation, especially for dialogue that was hard to catch clearly. But yeah, this is going to be a really thorough look.
Absolutely. Ready to jump in. The timeline in the note starts right at 9:15 a.m.
Okay, 9:15 a.m. And the entry is dramatic right away. The notes say the officers rammed the front door.
Yeah, forced entry.
And the very first thing the notes capture, like the immediate sight as they breached the doorway, was a scared child.
Wow. That sets a heavy tone right from the start, doesn't it?
It really does.
And the notes immediately paint this picture of the house's condition. It's described as just, well, overwhelmingly filthy. Floors completely buried under clothes, junk.
To the point where there's no clear path in places.
Exactly. The notes specify that having to actually walk on stuff to get through, countertops stacked high with random things, liquor bottles noted everywhere, it's immediate, overwhelming filth and hoarding.
And the notes draw this really stark contrast, right, between this mess and the kitchen area sometimes shown on stream.
Oh yeah, explicitly. The note-taker points out that the kitchen shown online looks relatively clean, concluding it's clearly staged, a total facade just for streaming, completely different from the rest of the house's reality.
That difference, public versus private, seems like a recurring theme here.
It comes up early, yeah.
So moving just a minute later, 9:01 a.m., the notes show Kayla and April being brought out of the house, led outside. And you start hearing a dog barking in the background pretty constantly from this point.
Okay, then 9:15 a.m., officers are calling for a child downstairs.
Right. They know there's another child. The notes say the kids are being removed while the search starts. An officer goes downstairs to get the youngest one.
And she comes up with him.
Yeah, holding his hand, talking to him. Though, like we said, the audio here is noted as unclear because of the noise. But there's this little detail the notes capture.
What's that?
As the little girl heads for the door to go outside, she stops, pauses, specifically to pick up the cat. Wants to take the cat with her.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Just a small, poignant moment amidst everything else. The search is definitely underway by now. The notes also mention, early on, a nitrous tank is visible inside the house.
Another immediate sign. Okay.
Then around 9:21 a.m., they hear Nick's voice from outside.
What's he saying? Yelling, "Get out of my house," according to the notes. He mentions probable cause, the search warrant.
Right.
Sounds indignant.
Okay. And Pomplun.
Also, Pomplun steps out to a squad car around 9:22 a.m. Looks like he's getting gloves.
Makes sense.
And when he walks back towards the house, about 9:23 a.m., his camera catches the scene outside. And the notes describe it as devastating. All the kids are sitting on the ground, huddled together against the house wall, with Kayla there too.
The notes specifically call that scene heartbreaking.
Yeah, that visual. The kids just sitting there while their home is being turned upside down adds such weight to everything.
Definitely. So back inside, 9:24 a.m., Kayla is brought back in and searched.
Yes. And then a minute later, 9:25 a.m., Officer Pomplun goes into a bedroom where other officers are already busy. They're photographing evidence.
And this is where they find the first drugs.
Right. The notes pinpoint it. Drugs and paraphernalia found directly on top of a red mini fridge.
Yeah.
It was being used as a nightstand right next to the bed. So key evidence surfaces very quickly.
Okay, and then they move on to the streaming room around 9:28 a.m.
Yep, photographing evidence in there. And the notes are very specific about this space. It's much smaller than it looks on stream.
Really?
Yeah, and the condition is way worse. Bottles of alcohol noted everywhere. The whole place is just buried under hoarded junk. Electronics, collectibles, random gear piled up.
You can see his setup, though, the monitors and stuff.
Oh, yeah, the 5 monitors, the equipment, it's visible. But everything around it is just chaos and clutter. It hammers home that point about the curated background being a total facade.
Like the kitchen.
Exactly. The notes also mention them going through a specific bag full of brown glass bottles, each one wrapped individually in tissues.
Okay. And then something significant happens at 9:33 a.m.
Big one. An officer comes into the streaming room, tells Pomplun and the others they found cocaine
Where?
in the bedroom, specifically the one where Kayla and April came out of earlier.
Wow. So that confirms the warrant's basis almost immediately.
Pretty much. So from 9.33 to about 9.38, some officers gather in the entryway, kind of a quick internal briefing.
What are they discussing? The notes capture anything.
Yeah, paraphrase because the audio was noisy. But key points. One officer mentions Nick is trying to ask them questions, not answering theirs. Another talks about needing statements, figuring out who actually lives there.
And family services.
Critical point. Mentioning the need to call family services because of the conditions and the kids being there.
Makes sense. So Pomplun checks back in the master bedroom quickly, then heads outside.
Right. Heads out for his first face-to-face with Nick, recorded on this camera. He approaches Nick, says they need to ask some questions, do a quick interview. Wants the house layout, asks about the nanny.
Nanny in quotes.
Yeah, notes put it in quotes like it's a term they heard used, and asks who actually stays there.
And Nick's reaction.
Immediate pushback. What's your probable cause? That's his first question, according to the notes.
Pomplun's response.
Just states he has the search warrant. The notes describe Nick standing there, arms crossed, looking calm but hands. The notes add he looks like shit.
Ooh.
And Nick says, cool, you have no probable cause.
Pomplun asks if he's willing to talk.
Yeah. Nick says, sure, but then immediately tacks on, you still have no probable cause.
Okay, a bit of a loop there.
Pomplun basically says he's not debating that. Nick got the warrant. He knows how this works. Nick repeats something about probable cause again. It goes back and forth briefly.
Until 9:38 a.m. when they read him his rights.
Exactly. Miranda writes red. Then the questioning starts, focusing on the kids and the other adults. Pomplun confirms Kayla's his wife, asks about the other woman, April.
What does Nick say about April?
Gives her name, says she's just a friend, doesn't live there.
But Pomplun points out.
She came out of the bedroom, directly counters him.
And Nick's response.
Dismissive. Okay, so she came out of the bedroom. Pomplun tries, like, a comparison. When I have people over, they don't go in my bedroom.
How does Nick take that?
Snaps back. I don't give a shit what you do.
Okay, getting tense.
Pomplun stays calm, says he's just asking questions. Nick argues, you're not. You're making statements.
So Pomplun shifts, asks where Nick stays.
Yeah. Nick says, all over. It's my house. So Pomplun gets specific. Do you stay in the master bedroom?
Nick's answer.
When I'm in there, I stay in there. Sure. Pomplun follows up. Is that where you sleep at night? Nick says, yes.
And Pomplun's reaction.
That's all I needed to know. Ends that line of questioning.
Then he asks if Nick wants to speed things up. Tell them where things are.
Right. Nick asks what things are. But Pomplun reminds him. Controlled substances, like it says on the warrant he saw.
And Nick refuses.
Point blank. I'm not admitting to anything. That's ridiculous. You still have no probable cause.
Okay. So Pomplun lays out the next step.
Tells him they'll be searching the whole house and calling family services. Nick asks, why?
And Pomplun tells him.
Because we've already found cocaine in the house. Just states the fact.
How does Nick react to that?
Just stares at him. According to the notes, Pomplun adds, we're not here on a whim. Nick insists, yes, you are.
Bit of a back and forth.
Yeah. Pomplun, no, we're not. Nick, yes. Pomplun explains again. Came looking for drugs, found drugs within 10 minutes.
Nick's response.
I don't know anything about it. Then he brings up family services, mentions the grandparents.
And Pomplun confirms that's likely. Trying to place kids with family.
Confirms family services involvement is probable, and yes, they'll try to place the kids with a relative, if possible.
Okay. Then around 9:42 a.m., there's this visual moment the notes capture.
Yeah, described as almost cinematic. Mick and April are both handcuffed in the driveway facing each other.
And the description of April.
Looking at Nick with a pouty face and puppy dog eyes. Notes mention her outfit too. Black cutoff shorts, black long sleeve crop top.
As Nick's being walked away, he says something pretty harsh.
Yeah, the notes quote him directly telling the officer, I hope you catch gonorrhea and die. Before they put him in the car, they stop to photograph sores on his arms. Notes say he has a lot of them.
Does he ask about Kayla?
Yeah, asks if she'll be arrested too. Pomplun says yes, but she'll stay with the kids until family services and grandparents arrive.
Nick's reaction to that.
Visibly seething, according to the notes. Pomplun tells him they'll talk later at the jail. Nick's reply isn't clear due to noise.
Then Pomplun goes to talk to April.
Right. Walks over, introduces himself, Explains she's going to jail, confirms she's been Mirandized, starts asking questions.
How long has she been there?
She says not that long, maybe a month. Claims she's trying to find her own place. But when Pomplun clarifies, "You've been living here," she says, "Yep." Mentions staying in the sunroom a lot, knows the family a while.
And he confirms she came out of the bedroom with Kayla.
She confirms that, says she was hanging out there, asked what they were doing. She says Kayla was sleeping and she was just changing clothes.
Pomplun tells her it's a narcotics warrant.
Yes. And the notes say April shakes her head. No, could be confusion, disbelief, maybe pretending.
Another officer asks about her keeping stuff in that bedroom.
Yeah. Asks if she was changing there and keeps stuff there. She says yes to both. Then an officer brings over 2 pairs of shoes.
Does she identify them?
Identifies her slip-on sandals, says the others aren't hers. The officer apparently apologizes for the sheer amount of stuff everywhere.
She tries to put on sandals while cuffed.
Yeah, and they keep questioning her. Ask where she sleeps. She says sometimes the sunroom couch is uncomfortable, so sometimes she sleeps next to Kayla in the bed.
She needs help with the sandals.
Yeah, interrupts to ask for help, and an officer helps her put them on.
Audio gets tricky again here.
Yeah, notes say paraphrase dialogue due to noise. An officer says something about the warrant, then adds, "I'll let you think about that." April shakes her head no again, looking overwhelmed or confused.
And then they tell her the charge.
Yes. 5th-degree felony controlled substance offense.
Her reaction.
Oh my God.
Just that.
Officer says they'll talk more later. Yeah. Says they'll meet up later, try to make things clearer, asks if he has questions. She says she wouldn't even know what to ask, calls the whole thing scary.
Then they place her in a squad car. Okay. What about Kayla? Around 9:47 a.m.
Notes say Kayla refuses to speak without her attorney. A female officer, who the notes mention is holding a big gun, relays this message.
And Kayla and the kids are still outside.
Yes, still sitting on the ground against the house, visible behind the female officer. The notes again capture Kayla sitting with her head on her oldest daughter's shoulder, calling it a heartbreaking scene.
As Pomplun walks away, he hears the female cop say something about clothes.
Yeah, something like she's going to try to get her some clothes, but it's unclear who her refers to.
Pomplun goes back inside.
Walks back through the house, lets out a huge sigh, just looking at everything. Puts on gloves, asks about the search progress in the master bedroom. Still hard to hear clearly over the barking dog.
He steps out again briefly, 9:48 a.m.
Yeah, out to his car. Drinks Mountain Dew, gets snuff. Passes Kayla and the kids again on the way back in notes. Kayla isn't sitting with him this time. Has a brief, unclear interaction with another cop. Someone mentions the house being huge. Goes back to the car one more time for something unseen.
And back inside, the audio is still tough.
Still difficult. Noise, radio chatter, that incessant barking. The notes mention the dog is in a bathroom with a baby gate up.
Can they hear discussion about evidence?
Yeah, amidst the noise. Talk about drugs, firearms, finding .22 casings. Officer Pomplun starts actually writing the evidence list.
What's first on the list?
Evidence, #1.
Check.
Snort tube from that nightstand fridge area. Tested positive for cocaine. 4 cops searching that room. Pomplun has to go back to his car for evidence bags. By 9:54 a.m., he's back inside logging again.
Okay, evidence #2.
Glass vial from the nightstand, also positive for cocaine. #3 is 2 credit cards with April's name.
And the notes describe what else was on that fridge nightstand.
Yeah, uses that term, cuck fridge. On top, a Celsius can, a couple of candles, a spray bottle, maybe lube, notes speculate, and an unframed picture of Nick and Kayla just lying on top of other junk.
Then there's that concerning detail about the pill bottle.
Right. An officer picks up a pill bottle, paraphrase comment about finding a kid's prescription right next to the cocaine, has the name Celeste on it.
But Celeste is Nick's mom.
Exactly. The note taker flags this immediately, adds questions right in the notes. Is she giving him drugs? Did he steal them?
Raising immediate questions about family involvement.
They also look at casino cards.
Yeah, player cards for Nick and Kayla. They photograph those. Then at 9:56 a.m., a cop pulls a paper bag from an armoire. Sounds like mention of a meth pipe. Discussion if it's used. Looks dirty, brown glass.
9:57 a.m., spent shell casings.
2 spent .22 shell casings found on the floor. They also find pipes and bongs. I think they look unused initially. Dog's still barking like crazy.
To the point Pomplun comments on it.
Yeah, he says, we've got to do something about that dog.
Okay. 9:58 a.m., he documents the gun found under the bed. The big gun. Yeah. Logs that. Continues processing evidence in that bedroom up to 10 a.m. Lots of movement, chatter, bagging, documenting audio, still a challenge.
Someone mentions finding edibles.
Yep. Another officer holds up what looks like a grinder with white powder, says they'll test it. And at 10:01 a.m., a child's voice is heard back inside the house briefly.
Moving past 10:00 a.m., 10:02 a.m., more evidence logging.
Documenting more. Metal container, 2 glass ones with powder. A female officer comes in asking about taking something to jail for Kayla.
Something else found under the bed.
Yeah, an officer finds something. Pomplun asks what it is. The notes say it sounds like Supreme Court unclear word license. The word was just unintelligible.
Then the conversation shifts to Nick's arms, around 10:04.
Right. An officer asks, did you see Nick's arms? Track marks all down. Notes indicate discussion about potential needle use, but also the possibility they're just sores, paraphrased due to audio. They also mention having passed Nick in his car on their way to the house earlier.
At 10:05, an update on Kayla's interview.
Another cop comes in, says they're interviewing Mom now. Pomplun expects it'll take a while. This leads to a discussion about planning the search.
Where did they decide to focus?
Master bedroom, the 2 studios, and this sort of inner router vault or studio area. They call the studio Nick's lair. They start assigning officers to specific zones.
Pomplun emphasizes something here. 10:06 a.m.
Yeah, the notes capture him stressing due diligence for the kids, saying they need to do all they can. They're still waiting for the kids and dog to be picked up, so they split up the remaining officers.
They discuss April's purse. 10:07 a.m.
Briefly mention it was left behind because it had cash in it.
Pomplun leaves the bedroom search then.
Leaves it to 3 other cops, heads towards the front door. Comments there's a lot of stuff in the downstairs studio. Sees Kayla near the front door with, looks like, 2 family service workers.
Then he goes downstairs. 10:08 a.m.
Heads downstairs. Describes the family room area, first fireplace, arcade games, drum set, kids stuff. Notes this is outside the studio space.
Passes through another room first.
A small library-type room, lots of books, random things on shelves. Then enters the studio area around 10:09 a.m.
What's happening in the studio?
Someone mentions vials, but something about homemade whiskey. Pomplun opens a Ziploc bag, finds a small box inside, looks like it has a food picture, like from a frozen meal.
Finds vials in the bag.
Yeah, different ones. One with a brown substance, one labeled brine, another looks like a whole pepper. Notes call it weird. Finds a bag of seeds, too, again sparking talk about homemade whiskey or something similar.
10:11 a.m., he starts looking through papers.
Yeah, picks up a handwritten letter. The note-taker spent time on this because it was confusing. Seemed like father-daughter stuff, dad admitting selfishness, getting shit no praise. Daughter practiced a song for him.
But it wasn't personal.
Turns out, the note-taker researched it. It's dialogue or themes from the movie Train to Busan. The note-taker just wrote, weird shit documenting to be thorough.
Okay. What else in the papers?
Letter from the County Environmental Services about a building or shed. Then a signed anime picture looks exactly like a known example, notes say. Then an autographed photo of Eric Rowland.
The notes capture the signature.
Yeah. Here's looking at you, Nikki, with a lipstick kiss mark and then P.S. Look here, with an arrow pointing near the shirt buttons. Note taker tried an AI version but couldn't get the P.S. and arrow right.
Finds mail.
Unopened certified mail to Kayla with writing on the envelope. Then a cardboard box with question marks drawn on it.
What's inside?
Full of shredded paper. He digs through, finds something he thinks might be a big mushroom, asks another cop who says no. Pomplun smells it, puts it back. Wasn't visible long.
Then a major find at 10:1.46.
Crucial moment. Another officer walks in carrying a safe, found under the master bathroom sink.
What kind of safe?
Briefcase type. Locked.
Mm-hmm.
But a small piece of a baggie is sticking out.
They test it.
Test the part sticking out positive for cocaine.
So they need the key.
Right. The officer goes to look for it and takes a quick call, then approaches Kayla, who's with the family service workers, asks for the key, tells her they need it or they'll break the safe open.
Kayla's response.
Says she doesn't know where it is.
Okay, so they have to break it open. Around 10.14.41.
They go outside. Notes mention the kids are still sitting there on the ground. Cops go behind their vehicles, use a pry bar and mallet to force the safe open.
And inside.
The notes say it's full of drugs, paraphernalia, and baggies. Just packed.
They take a picture.
Yep. Photograph it. Then decide to take it somewhere better, inside, to process properly. As they walk back in, another officer mentions the grandparents are on their way now.
Where do they take the safe?
Small bathroom. Place it right on the toilet lid, open it up.
What do they find inside this one?
Okay, a baggie with KKK written on it, they guess ketamine, a digital scale. Snort tubes. A metal piece that looks like a crack pipe. Another metal thing like a spoon missing its handle.
Officer's reaction.
Calls for another cop, says, this is insane. His glove rips, needs a new one. He voices suspicions, thinks one powder is ketamine, refers to some items as bites, guessing Molly or LSD. Then they start formally documenting everything from the safe.
What's listed specifically from this safe?
The baggie that was sticking out, positive for cocaine. Cards and a rolled-up dollar bill. A large corner-cut baggie with white powder. Ziploc bags containing smaller baggies, including the KKK one. Another Ziploc with multiple small bags of powder. The digital scale. A metal pen or container. 2 snort tubes. 2 cutters. It's a significant haul from just that one safe.
Okay. 10:24 a.m., Pomplun goes back to the studio.
Back downstairs. A cop mentions they didn't search really dusty stuff, figuring it hadn't been touched recently. Someone else comments on weird stuff down there, like a bunch of pencil shavings. Pomplun calls the studio his hangout.
There's another unclear audio bit here.
Yeah, another cop says something, and Pomplun's response is noted as something like, because you can't do it with your girlfriend and me, wife, I guess. I don't know. Kind of cryptic.
10:25 a.m., he's looking at artwork.
Yeah, stuff leaning against the wall, including that well-known cat painting. Notes mention getting a close-up look at items usually just in the stream background. Finds a container with something like cornstarch inside. Continues searching collectibles, opening boxes.
He asks about other safes.
Yeah, there aren't other safes, he asks. Then a family service worker comes by, asks about getting electronics for the kids since they're going to grandma's.
10:32 a.m., Pomplun goes into a room with clothes.
Yeah, room with clothing racks, lots of seemingly clean clothes. Kayla's in there with family services, gathering kids' clothes. The officer asks again about getting electronics for them.
And off to the garage, 10:33 a.m.
Heads to the garage, finds out, yep, there's another safe there. Gets tools to open it.
They open the garage safe at 10:35 a.m. Contents.
Guns and ammo. Takes pictures of all of it.
Another cop comments on boxes in the garage.
Yeah, looks at boxes and totes, asks how long they've lived there. Pomplun says, a while. The cop observes it looks like half-unpacked moving boxes. Pomplun wonders if it's April stuff, since she said she'd only been there a month.
Someone walks by with the dog. 10:37 a.m.
Yeah, dog on a leash, presumably being taken out or handed off.
Then yet another safe reported. 10:38 a.m.
Unbelievable. Officer reports a safe in the master bedroom closet. Pomplun says bring it to the garage.
So they break open this third safe in the garage.
They do. And this one contains Ziploc baggies, a rolled up $100 bill with white powder residue, rolling papers, a lot of THC cartridges, a scooper, and a small funnel.
They suspect fentanyl.
The notes say they're unsure about some powders, but suspect fentanyl. Take pictures. But interestingly, the notes specify they leave the THC cartridges. Don't put them into evidence. Plan to test everything else back at the station.
Pomplun starts documenting all this new evidence.
Yeah, logging the drugs, paraphernalia, guns, ammo from the last 2 safes, lists serial numbers on the guns. They discuss needing to do a final basic sweep kids' rooms, other bathrooms.
10:47 a.m., Kayla's mom arrives.
Yep, arrives to pick up the kids and the dog. Notes mention seeing the kids again during this handoff.
Kayla comes back inside shortly after 10:48 a.m.
Walks back in. Notes describe her as looking strung out, wearing a backless shirt, tattoos visible.
Okay, so from 10:48 a.m. to around 11:00 a.m., it's final sweeps and wrapping up.
Pretty much. They find a box with April's name on it, open and check it. At 10:51, they go through kitchen cabinets, focus on the one with pills and medicines.
Think they find needles?
Initially, but realize they're syringes without needles, likely for liquid meds. They do a final quick sweep of the rest of the house around 10:55 a.m.
Pomplun goes back into the master closet.
with another officer. The other officer points out where previous evidence was found, the bullet casing, the safe's location.
And then there's that detail about the shelf.
Right. The other cop, looking at a shelf in the back of the closet, says there are all kinds of THC, vapes, and adult stuff just sitting there. The note-taker stresses that while it wasn't visible from Pomplun's angle, these items were out in the open, easily visible and accessible to anyone who walks in, including the kids.
Wow, so easily accessible.
That's the implication flagged in the notes.
Mm-hmm.
By 10:56 a.m., they confirm everyone else is gone, start gathering their own gear. One officer mentions at 10:58 a.m. the earlier incident where Nick supposedly threw the warrant on the ground.
And they leave by 11:00 a.m.
Notes indicate officers are clear of the residence by 11:00 a.m.
Okay, so that's the timeline. What are the big takeaways the notes emphasize at the end?
They summarize some key observations. The house layout is just chaotic, weird. The master bedroom's proximity to common areas is flagged as concerning for kids' potential exposure.
And the messiest areas.
Are where the adults spend most time. It reinforces that the streaming setup, any clean spot, is pure illusion versus the filthy, cramped reality.
And the accessibility of drugs.
A huge point. Not everything was hidden. Some drugs, paraphernalia, were noted as being out in the open, accessible to kids, master bedroom, bathroom, that closet shelf.
The overall conditions for the kids and animals.
The notes really emphasize the weight of this, the filth, chaos, drugs, weapons, the dog in the bathroom, the cat, the kids living in that daily. The note taker felt it was palpable in the footage.
Lack of organization, too. Basic stuff mixed with drug gear.
Total lack of separation. Important documents next to junk, no clear adult versus kid zones.
And that pill bottle belonging to Celeste, Nick's mom.
The note taker felt that raised serious questions about the parents' grandparents' role. Enabling. Turning a blind eye. Involved. Suggests a lack of boundaries, maybe generational issues affecting the kids directly.
The notes also comment on the officer's behavior.
Yeah, describes him as patient, professional, respectful. Minimal commentary, didn't mock or escalate, seemed restrained despite the conditions. Acknowledges the search could have been even more thorough, but seemed focused on key evidence while trying to minimize disruption, especially with kids present initially.
So looking back at this whole deep dive into the notes, it's an intense picture.
Incredibly stark. The contrast between public image and private reality is just vast.
Yeah.
The sheer amount and variety of evidence, hidden and not hidden. And the living conditions documented are deeply, deeply concerning. It really shows why digging into raw source material like this is so valuable, to get past any surface story.
Absolutely. And it leaves you thinking, what are the long-term effects on kids raised like this, where there are basically no boundaries between adult drug use, weapons, and their own space, where basic living conditions are just neglected? What's hidden behind that curated image, and what responsibility comes with knowing the reality is so chaotic, so dangerous? It's a lot to consider.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources, notes, research, and really unpack the key insights. We give you that shortcut to being well-informed, without the information overload.
Exactly. We're here to guide you through, pull out those details that really matter.
And today, we're diving into something, pretty unique and honestly quite intense. It's a set of notes someone took while watching police body cam footage.
Yeah, footage from a search warrant execution. So our entire view of this event comes from this one observer's detailed notes written down as they watched officers navigating this specific scene.
It's a really interesting perspective, isn't it? Kind of secondhand, but incredibly detailed.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to walk you through those notes step by step. We want to pull out everything significant the observer mentioned right from the moment officers arrive, through the whole search, all the discovery.
It's about understanding the environment they walked into, the timeline, what was found, all seen through the lens of these specific observations from the body cam footage notes.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the notes kick off with the arrival, officers pulling up in the car. What's the very first thing the observer picks up on about the place itself?
Well, even before they go in, the notes mention the outside already looks a bit rough. There's a dirty cat house or tower and filled trash bags just sitting there on the patio.
Right, so the clutter isn't just inside. It starts right there. And they see people inside pretty quickly, too.
Yes, the observer notes seeing kids through a window straight away, which, establishes children are present, and that becomes really significant later on.
And getting someone to the door took a bit of effort, apparently.
Yeah, the notes are specific. Multiple knocks announcing search warrant, maybe 6 times before there's any response.
6 times? That's quite a delay.
It is, and then they hear why. A child's voice comes through saying her dad told her not to answer the door.
Wow. Okay, so right at the start, there's this instruction noted, don't open the door for the police. That's a striking detail for the observer to catch.
Definitely sets a tone. And then they make entry. The description of what they immediately see inside is vivid. The observer calls it a literal labyrinth of clothes and stuff.
A labyrinth. That word really paints a picture. Not just messy, but confusing to move through.
Exactly. The notes emphasize it was hard to even tell rooms apart. Counters, tables just covered, bottles, clothes, food packages, kids' stuff, all jumbled together.
It sounds like an environment just completely overwhelmed. The notes say there was very little space to walk around the piles.
Yeah, that's the phrasing. Not just untidy, but actually hard to physically move around, which obviously makes searching or even just living there pretty difficult.
So, okay, they're inside this initial chaotic scene. What do the notes say about the first few moments, the initial scan?
Well, the first priority seems to be finding the people. The notes say 2 females, April and Kayla, were located in the main bedroom, though the observer watching the footage couldn't see them right away on the camera feed itself.
Gotcha. And that child's voice keeps repeating the thing about her dad's instructions.
Yeah, as officers move through what the observer thinks is maybe a combined kitchen, dining, living area again, hard to distinguish because of all the stuff, it just reinforces that earlier point from the notes. An officer apparently mentions the child is 6 years old.
And then one of the adults, Kayla, appears on camera. How does the observer describe her?
The notes are quite specific here. She has her arms up, speaks with a very dry voice, and seems lethargic and out of it. Those are the observer's words, their interpretation from the footage.
Lethargic and out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. The notes also mention passing another room, maybe a kid's room.
Yeah, potentially. It had a rainbow IKEA shelf, apparently, but was just completely flooded with junk and clothes. The observer actually calls it an actual hoarder-looking room.
Hoarder-looking, so really extreme levels of clutter in certain spots.
Seems like it. The observer also mentions a couple of times thinking the officer might be covering the camera, or maybe it was just blocked accidentally. It's the kind of detail you'd notice watching closely. And the overall impression, just generally. The notes keep saying things like, just shit everywhere, random piles of clothes being the main feature.
It wasn't just small stuff either, right? There was something about furniture.
Yes, an overturned chair or maybe a love seat at the bottom of the stairs. And the observer makes a point of noting it looked like it was put there before the police arrived. Clearly was done before the cops showed up, is the quote from the notes.
Huh. That's interesting. Like, was it blocking access or just part of the chaos?
The notes don't speculate, just make the observation. It's an odd detail.
Amidst all this, a bit of normalcy, a cat.
Huh, yeah. A large, fluffy orange cat is seen. The observer notes it's cute, kind of jarringly normal, maybe.
And then there's a time check.
Yeah, the notes say 10 minutes into the footage, and Nick, presumably the dad the child mentioned, hasn't been seen on camera yet.
Okay, so where do they look next?
The garage, which is also described as very cluttered, lots of boxes, like maybe they just moved in, and specifically lots of packed luggage bags are noted.
Packed luggage. But the observer calls the garage
the most normal room in the house, which really tells you something about the state of the rest of it, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, back upstairs after the garage.
Yeah, and there's a quick close-up glimpse of a counter mention, food wrappers, bottles, an open box of goldfish crackers, just more stuff intermingled.
Just adds to the picture. So after being inside for a bit, Nick finally shows up. Where is he and what's the description?
He's seen outside in the driveway. The notes describe him looking meekly, but also pissed, like he's about to cry, arms folded. And the observer notes the specific clothes, short cargo shorts, and a shitty Jamaican-colored tank.
Okay, quite a specific visual noted down.
Yeah, the emotional state and the look really seem to register.
So while Nick's outside, the officer whose camera we're following goes back inside, and the focus shifts.
Right. This seems to be where the search gets more targeted. The officer starts gathering supplies, gloves, mentioning drug testing materials specifically for the main bedroom. Ah, okay. So the initial scan pointed them towards that room.
Seems that way. And the notes mention that a fair bit of the footage around this time is just officers getting these supplies together, talking strategy.
Which makes sense, given the environment.
Exactly. The observer notes them discussing how to approach it because the house is so big and so cluttered, it's clearly not a straightforward search.
So they go into the bedroom, and the description of the clutter there
intensifies even more, according to the notes. Very, very, very cluttered space with lots of shit. And there's this odd little detail, a random tube just balancing on top of the lamp on the nightstand.
balancing, like nowhere else to put it.
Just emphasizes the lack of clear surfaces, maybe, and the sheer amount of random stuff crammed in there.
And the observer makes a really crucial point about the bedroom's location.
Yes, this is key. It's right off the main hallway. The notes stress that its contents would be easily accessible, easily visible to kids walking by every day. You could apparently look right under the bed and nightstands from that hallway. That accessibility is huge, given what they find.
Absolutely. And the officers mentioned that the two women, April and Kayla, were the ones found in this bedroom together initially.
Connecting them directly to this room. What else is noted about the room's contents generally?
An incredible amount of bottles and makeup products and clothes. And specifically, booze bottles and water cups seen on the windowsills.
More bottles. Seems like a theme.
It does. The officer pops downstairs briefly, scans a stream room, notes the ceiling looks unfinished, covered with latex sheets. Also sees the kitchen table again, still piled high with stuff, loose documents mentioned too.
Just adding more detail to the overall picture of the house's condition. Back upstairs, the observer mentions the stairs again.
Yeah, reinforces the clutter near the top. Shoes, garbage, lots of junk, described as potentially dangerous, just highlights the physical hazards.
Okay, and this is where the discoveries really start piling up in the notes, around 9 minutes, 31 seconds.
Right. The officer swabs something near a pillow, and it tests positive for cocaine.
There it is, the first confirmed positive test. In the bedroom.
Exactly. Confirms drugs right there in that accessible living space.
And then they find something else.
A black vial. Looks like a lipstick tube, the observer notes. Officer unscrews it, sees white powder inside, and reacts like, yeah. A picture is taken.
The officer's reaction suggests they know what it likely is.
Yeah. And then the officer states it clearly. There's a measurable amount of cocaine in the bedroom.
Measurable amount, so not just trace.
That's the term used, indicating a significant quantity. That statement gets repeated shortly after. And around the same time, another officer mentions finding a large stack of cash.
Cash, too. Okay. Adds another layer.
And while this is happening inside, the notes mention some interaction outside with Nick. An officer relays that Nick's asking about probable cause and feels he's been, quote, hurt.
So Nick's reacting, questioning the legal basis.
Seems like it. And then, based on the cocaine discovery, the main officer takes a really significant step. Makes the call to Child Protective Services. The notes pinpoint the time, 9:37, and the reason stated on the call. We located a measurable amount of cocaine, and there are 4 children here.
Wow. Directly connecting the drugs to the kids' presence, that's a major development.
Huge. And while that call is being made, the observer catches another glimpse of the kitchen counter, just completely covered in booze bottles, even over by the sink.
More confirmation of the alcohol bottles everywhere, even in the main kitchen space.
The observer also notes the main part of the house seems dark, confusing, hard to make things out in the footage sometimes without pausing or rewinding because of the clutter and maybe the lighting.
Just speak to the difficulty of the scene itself. So things shift around 9:39.
Yeah, officers move outside to deal with April and Nick. Leads to them being cuffed and arrested.
This is the formal custody point, and the observer describes April's appearance.
In detail, yeah, based on the footage. Notes, a slutty top, black crop top showing cleavage stomach, large rock jewelry in her belly button. The observer adds a subjective comment in the notes about it being inappropriate wear around kids, but that's flagged as their opinion.
Okay, and her general demeanor.
Also described pretty starkly. Notes say she looks very dry and unhealthy, seems out of it and on something, maybe hungover. Voice sounds like drowning in sand. The summary is just gross and out of it again. These are the observer's recorded impressions.
Right, so 9:42, April gets her rights read.
Yep. Refuses to speak without a lawyer present, but cooperates physically with the handcuffing, gets put in the car. Nick is also cuffed, no resistance noted.
And April asks for shoes. She was barefoot.
Yeah, and then there's this back and forth noted where officers keep asking her which room she was in when they arrived.
What does she say?
According to the notes, she says the main room, and seems to be avoiding saying the bedroom where the cocaine was found. The observer interprets this as her possibly knowing that admitting being in that room with Kayla could be bad for her legally.
Interesting interpretation noted. And Nick.
Still looking very pissed, arms crossed, right before being cuffed. That emotion is consistently noted.
Then the officer whose camera we're seeing goes back inside for April's shoes.
Yeah, the observer notes this as a kind gesture, and interestingly, specifies the shoes were found haphazardly placed at the top of the stairs, reinforcing that clutter hazard again.
And as the officer goes back in, the cat gets out.
The orange cat, yeah. It scopes outside. The kids who are on the patio tell the officer it's okay, the cat can go out.
Okay. And the notes mention the kids seem okay.
Yeah, says another officer was kindly asking them about pets, trying to calm them. Notes say the kids seemed okay and in decent spirits, not crying at that moment.
And Kayla is thought to be with them, waiting for CPS.
That's the understanding from the notes. The CPS worker, woman in a white and black striped shirt, is seen arriving.
Yeah.
Confirms that process is moving forward.
Okay, so back inside, 9:46, main bedroom again. More searching.
Right. And another officer mentions finding quite a bit of edibles in there.
Edibles now, too.
Adds to the list. Observer assumes weed edibles, but notes concern about other types and, again, accessibility to kids.
Then, at 9:47, that black vial gets formally tested.
Yep. Swab turns blue instantly. Confirmed cocaine. And the observer reiterates, found right there on the bedstand, visible from the hallway.
That location is just so prominent.
It really stands out in the notes. The officer keeps searching that bedstand area,
Yeah.
and then another officer reports finding a rifle.
A rifle. Where?
Under the bed.
Under the bed, in that room, with the drugs, accessible from the hall. Wow.
It's a huge discovery, a major safety red flag highlighted right there in the notes.
The main officer steps out briefly.
Yeah, and a female officer is seen with Kayla, getting her ready, the notes, getting her dressed to go to jail with the others.
So Kayla's being arrested too.
Seems so. Then back to the bedroom footage. The rifle is seen. It's in its box, on the bed now. Observer notes it's a cardboard box, not locked up at all, and calls the rifle huge.
Stun secured, huge rifle, under the bed.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then, 9:50, an officer is heard saying they found 2 spent casings in the bedroom.
Spent casings. So it's potentially been fired in there?
That's the implication. Adds another layer. Then a snort tube is found on the nightstand. Tests positive for cocaine. Bagged as evidence, #1.
Paraphernalia right there too.
Exactly. Notes mention open drinks and tubes also on the bedstand. The black vial gets bagged up too.
And then something about credit cards.
Yeah, 2 credit cards in April's name are found.
Yep.
And the notes stress that the snort tube and the black cocaine vial were found directly on top of these cards.
Directly linking her ID to the drugs and paraphernalia.
Pretty clearly, according to the notes. And then at 9:54 comes another really striking discovery mentioned by the officers.
What's that?
Medication belonging to someone named Celeste. Found literally right next to the cocaine vial, snort tube, and credit cards on that same bedstand.
Wait, prescription meds for someone else.
Yeah.
Mixed right in with cocaine and snorting gear.
That's what the notes say. It's an incredible detail. Highlights the chaos, the disorganization, and the massive risk, especially with kids around.
Unbelievable. So the officer starts searching the floor near the bed and stand and realizes something about the bedstand.
Yes. This is a key clarification in the notes.
Yeah.
The observer realizes the surface holding all this stuff, the cocaine, the tube, the cards, the meds, isn't a normal nightstand. It's the red fridge Nick uses.
The fridge, they open it.
Yeah. And the observer sees jars of jam on the fridge door, confirms food was inside this same fridge that had drugs and paraphernalia on top of it.
So food, medicine, illegal drugs, snorting tubes, credit cards, all clustered on and in this one easily accessible fridge.
That's the picture painted by the notes. And reinforcing the accessibility point, the observer notes a white stuffed animal and a hairbrush right at the foot of the fridge bed area, plus other toys on the floor. Says it suggests kids definitely come into this area.
More direct links in the notes between this dangerous zone and the children. Observer also sees a small laptop, light on, wedged between the bed and fridge, but notes no officer comments on it.
Just another detail captured.
Okay, back to the rifle. The number is noted.
Yeah, 200-006-38. And officers state multiple magazines were found with it in the bedroom.
Multiple magazines, too. Increases the danger level again.
Definitely. 10 minutes in, more edibles mentioned found in the bedroom. Confirmation again, rifle found under the bed.
Just hammering that point home.
Yeah.
What else in the bedroom?
Another item. Metal funnel or vial object found with a glass vial containing white powder. This was under the TV shelf.
More potential drugs.
Yeah. Testing gives a faint blue swab indicating a possible mixture, observer notes, bagged as evidence. Weed pipes are also found, tested for other drugs too.
Just more and more stuff.
And around 10:04, an officer voices frustration, just the sheer amount of stuff to sift through.
Understandable.
And the main officer gives a warning to the team, tells them to be mindful of needles, says he thinks it's a possibility given everything else. So another potential hazard identified. Notes say they keep digging through floor piles, find a large packed luggage case under a huge mound of clothes.
Still finding packed bags deep in the clutter. Okay, 10:06. The officer decides to split the team.
Yeah, adjusts tactics, leaves others on the bedroom search. He heads downstairs to test Nick's studio, which another officer calls a little lair. April's post was also found in the bedroom, notes mention.
Right. Focus shifts downstairs. On the way, sees the CPS worker.
Briefly, yeah. Crossing paths around 10:08, confirms CPS is active on scene.
Okay, and before the studio itself?
A cluttered library room has 4 monitors, Joker painting behind them. Monitors are on, suggesting a stream just ended.
Gives context to Nick's activities right before they arrived. And the library itself.
Cluttered, naturally. Searching shelves, officers find something odd. Random $5 bills just stuffed into cups, pen holders. Some might be dollar origami, the observer thinks.
Huh. Weird detail.
Very specific observation. Testing other stuff in the library studio area yields nothing suspicious, according to the notes, just more bottles and trash. An officer finds a baggie of weird stuff. Observer speculates cloves, pepper, maybe a whiskey starter kit.
So not much down there initially besides clutter and oddities, but then something significant is found elsewhere.
Yes. Around 10:12, a large metal safe is brought down. It was found in the bathroom, and the observer specifically notes seeing a dirty Ziploc baggie poking out of it. Officer says he'll deal with it later.
A safe with something visibly poking out. Okay, that's definitely suspicious.
Big potential find. After a quick search elsewhere downstairs yields nothing, they return to the safe around 10:17. Need help moving it? They take it to a small red bathroom on the main floor to open and process.
Okay, processing the safe contents.
Observer notes a bit of confusion about where exactly it was found. Under the sink was mentioned, but it's a pillar sink. Maybe just tucked beside it. Observer muses.
Observer paying close attention to details and potential inconsistencies. So they get the safe open. What's inside?
Contents spread on the toilet bowl lid for testing. Observer sees a scale, blue snort tubes, and very dirty Ziplocs with cards and powders. Immediately looks like drug-related items.
And testing confirms.
10:19, yep. Cards and a baggie from one Ziploc test positive for cocaine.
Cocaine in the safe, too.
Confirmed. Then they start bagging the safe contents as evidence, systematically.
Okay, what's the list?
Evidence 8. A large corner cut, a large bag with a lot of white substance for later testing. Evidence 9. Ziploc baggie containing multiple smaller baggies, one with powder, and observer note specifically KKK written on it.
KKK written on a drug baggie. That's rest noted.
Explicitly. Evidence 10. Another Ziploc with multiple baggies of powder. Evidence 11. Digital scale. Evidence 12. Metal object, maybe a funnel containing powder. Evidence 13. 2 smart tubes, plastic straws, and 2 cutters.
Wow. That's quite the kit. Scale, multiple baggies including a large quantity, powder in a funnel, tools for cutting and snorting. Really points toward packaging and distribution, doesn't it?
The notes certainly paint that picture based on the contents, beyond just personal use.
So after dealing with the safe, where next?
Back downstairs to the studio area, searching through drawers packed with objects, loose documents.
Still more searching down there?
Yep. Continue in the library outside the studio, then back up to the bathroom briefly, double-checking.
Methodical.
Trying to be thorough in the chaos. Observer catches glimpses of other things, a skeleton model in the living room area, a dining table completely covered in junk and food packages.
Just more reinforcing details of the overall scene.
Then, 10:26, they enter a bathroom with a hot tub, and the observer notes something interesting here.
What's that?
Despite tons of stuff around, the floor is actually relatively clear. Observer calls it potentially the cleanest room seen. But still, lots of lotions, makeup, and booze bottles on counters and windowsills.
So even the cleanest room follows the pattern of bottles everywhere.
Exactly. Observer notes, again, generally lots of windows throughout the house have booze bottles on the sills. Laundry room scene, floor barely visible, just piles of clothes, laundry baskets.
Confirms the clothing situation. And then a particularly sad detail.
Yeah, this one stands out in the notes. A hallway window, 2 booze bottles sitting right next to little teddy bear figures on the same sill. Observer just writes, sad.
That image, alcohol right next to kids' toys, says so much.
It's a powerful juxtaposition noted down. Another cluttered room, closet, or bedroom may be full of shelves, clothes, huge rack of adult clothes, and here a bullet is found in a random trinket box, taken as evidence.
Another loose bullet. Unsecured ammo found just randomly.
Adds to the list. Then a very specific pop culture spot at 3340. Louder with Crowder mugs spotted Elme.
Huh. Okay, observer catching specific details.
And then, 10:36, another safe is found.
The second safe.
Yep. And the officer is heard looking for Kayla to get the code, hoping not to have to force this one either.
Suggests Kayla might have access to this one too.
Yeah.
Okay, where does it wrap up?
Just before the footage ends for the observer, they return to the garage. And an officer states clearly, found 2 handguns hanging out in the garage.
2 handguns in the garage, adding to the rifle and the bullet. Just unsecured firearms seemingly everywhere.
That's the final major discovery recorded in these notes before the observer's viewing ends.
No, okay. That was, an immersive and pretty overwhelming deep dive. Just following those observer notes, we really traced the officer's path through that chaotic house.
From the outside looking in, navigating that labyrinth, and then cataloging discovery after discovery, the drugs, the cash, multiple unsecured weapons, bullets, the paraphernalia, the medication, all detailed in the notes.
And What consistently comes through is the location of so many dangerous items. That bedroom right off the hall, kids' toys near the fridge with cocaine on it, those bottles next to the teddy bears. The notes really highlight that proximity.
It's such a specific viewpoint, isn't it? Just one person's detailed record of watching the body cam gives us this raw, unfiltered snapshot as interpreted and noted by them.
So reflecting on all this,
Yeah.
this deep dive paints an incredibly detailed, if disturbing, picture based purely on these observer notes.
Yeah, and when you consider everything laid out in those notes, the measurable of cocaine, the other potential drugs, the multiple unsecured guns, the ammo, the paraphernalia suggesting distribution, the cash, all reportedly found in locations accessible to the 4 children living there. What fundamental questions does this raise for you listening to this account about the immediate safety, the potential long-term impact, and just the basic living conditions for everyone inside that house?
Definitely leaves you with a lot to think about.